In this video, we're going to look at 3 ways NVIDIA can be used to easily help with product design visualization using simple hand sketches as the starting point. We're going to look at a backpack, a VR headset, and a men's sports watch. So let's say that you're a product designer or an industrial designer and you've sketched ideas out and you want to rapidly prototype them. For instance, let's say that we have this backpack here that we're designing and we've sketched it out. We have the idea, and now we want to rapidly visualize what that can look like. So we take that and drop that here into the sketch to render area, and then we just give it a prompt. A modern backpack with light earth tone green top and dark warm gray on the bottom, black strap and black plastic buckles. Photographic studio on a white background. Very simple, and then we test it out. So pretty quickly, after just a minute or two, it's given us a really nice rendition. And then this is where you could go on and you could do some different views and maybe an animation of it to help visualize the product. Another product design idea we can sketch out is a VR headset. So let's say that you're a product designer and you've just been roughing out the idea for this headset. So let's go ahead and bring this into NVIDIA. And the first thing that we want to do is switch over to the kind of data that we want to bring in, which in this case is a sketch. So we go to sketch to render. You can see that appear right here. And then we simply take our file and we just drag it in. And then we give it a prompt. A VR headset, black elastic head straps with bump pattern, cool gray for the body of the headset, and a dark glass covering, metal ring around the front glass, studio lighting on a black background with reflective ground. So describe it as well as you can, but before we generate, I want to bring your attention to the fact that there are now 3 models that you can use in NVIDIA. There's Rendair, Rendair V2, and Nano Banana 2. We're going to take a look at each one because each one has strengths and weaknesses. So let's go ahead and start with Rendair V2. So the Rendair V2 model, which is the newest of the models, did a pretty good job of following our sketch and giving us something that also adhered to our prompt. But it's always good to check your options. So let's come over and look at the original Rendair model. Let's generate that. So here's the original Rendair model, and it definitely produces a little bit more of an industrial designed feel to it. I don't know if I like it. It's added a couple things here, but it's always good to test because you're never quite sure. The Rendair model, the original one, will tend to produce the most dynamic lighting. However, let's go ahead now and switch over to Nano Banana 2 and see if that also produces something that we like. So there we go. This has presented us with 3 options that we could play with. In addition to, we could just generate multiple iterations from a single model. And I think I kind of like when we come back, we look at this, I think I kind of like the original one using the Rendair V2 model. But let's say now that we think we want to test out a different plastic type of material, maybe like a white plastic on the body here. We can do that in a new mode called image to render. So let's do this. Let's come up here and we're going to switch modes to image to render, which is going to allow us to change the appearance of an existing render. So let's scroll up and let's delete what we had before. In fact, I'm just going to clear all so that we're starting new here. Image to render. Let's go ahead and select from a previous creation, and then we can come over here and we can find the image that we just generated. Now it's not going to appear right here. So just remember that this is only a display area for what's been generated. This is where you see what's currently being operated on. Now, the critical thing here is because we're going to be updating an existing image, Nano Banana V2 tends to do this the best. So I'm going to switch over to that. Let's type in our prompt. Replace the light blue gray material with the white plastic. The metal ring around the glass front remains. The circular connector on the side is radial anisotropic metal. Everything else is the same. And then we generate. So it's returned something that's pretty close to what we want, but not quite. It's changed this into this sort of opaque white. So let's add something here. The front glass is a black clear glass. Okay, so sometimes you'll just have to add a specific prompt, and then let's come over and generate again. And there we go. So this is sort of the iterative process that you'll go through when you're either generating something from scratch or you're operating on something that's existing. So I really like this, but I think I want to do one more interesting thing with it in terms of animation to help visualize the product. Well, let's say that we want to produce a new view of the VR headset. I've come over here into the chat mode. So the chat mode is more of a loose, free-form way of interacting with your models, whereas the create and edit are more structured ways of dealing with your images. So let's come over here to the little plus and let's select from a previous creation. Let's come over here and select the last generation that we had. And let's select one of the models. Nano Banana Pro is usually the best about what we're about to do. And I want to describe a new angle. So let's say, show me this VR headset from the top looking down. Something simple like that. And let's generate a new view. And there we go. So we can see now that it has given us a different view, sort of looking from the top down. Now you're going to note that it added something here. It added these clasps that weren't in the original. So what I did was I just came down and I said, try again. Sometimes if the first attempt doesn't give you what you want, simply say try again. And then it produced another iteration that didn't include those clasps. So it's more consistent with the original. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do a product animation with this using these two views. So the image that's now generated here in chat, I want to download that. So we can just come over here and download so we can actually gain access to that data, and there it appears. So now I'm going to come over to video, and I've loaded in the first image that I want to be as the starting point. And then I'm going to upload that image that I just downloaded. So we're going to choose or drop a file in here. And then we're simply going to describe what we want to happen with the motion, smooth, even motion. And it will use these as endpoints, and then we just generate. And here we go. Now it's produced just this easy animation between the two so you can get a sense for what it looks like spatially. Let's do another example. So let's say that I have another sketch of a product, which in this case is a men's sports watch. You've sketched it out and you want to just quickly visualize what it could look like. So let's come back over. We are in, let's switch over here to our sketch to render mode. And we will just drag in our sketch. And then we just give it a prompt. An expensive men's sports watch, brushed titanium for the bands. The perimeter of the watch has alternating red and neutral regions. The center face has anisotropic metal, 3 smaller watch faces on the main watch face, and then studio lighting with 3-point lighting, slightly reflective dark gray background. Then we just want to choose our model. For product design, you're generally going to do best with Rendair V2 or Nano Banana. So let's go with Rendair V2, and we'll do a couple of generations and see what that does for us. So here's the first generation. You'll note that it only put 2 of these here. So let's go ahead and just do another one. This is very common. Sometimes you'll have to do a couple of generations until you get just dialed in the way you want. So there we go. So the second take got the sub watch faces in perfectly. So I think I like this, but I do now want to just check. I want to see if the Nano Banana 2 gives me a better or a worse result. So this is just part of the process of determining which is best. So let's go ahead and let Nano Banana 2 give us a result. So that's actually pretty good also. So this is just one of the things. Every image is going to tend to behave differently with each of these models. But like I said, Rendair V2 and Nano Banana 2 tend to be better for product visualization. But what if we want to then take this and we want to rotate it at an angle? We can also do that. So I've switched this over here to image to render, which is this icon. This allows us to take an existing image and modify it. And we just select from the previous creation. Let's take this watch right here. And then we put in a prompt. Now, in this case, we're going to say, rotate the watch so we see it from a 3/4 angle. And then we just check the mode that we're in. Let's go ahead and start with Rendair V2 and let's generate. And that actually looks pretty good. So let's go ahead now and just see if Nano Banana gives us a different result. I always like testing these two because they're both really good at this type of thing. So we'll just keep the prompt and let's generate. And here is what Nano Banana 2 gave us. So this is actually pretty good too. So you can choose which of the two you think is better for your particular purposes. Now let's say that we don't like the gray background. We want to change it to more of a like a white background, but still kind of so it's resting on something. So let's do this. Let's remove this and let's select the previous creation. And then we'll give it a new prompt. White backdrop, reflective ground. Okay, and then we'll see how that works out. And there we go. So this is what I really like about this image to render is that it allows you to take existing renderings and alter them in some way.